How's it going, everyone? I am the Shaz here, bringing you the video going over the 14th edition of SBL. I want to start off by saying if you're new here, welcome. To those of you regulars, nice to see you again. Your regular reminder as always, try the best that you can to get yourself into the top 5k for the overall voltage rankings to get the highest amount of high memory exchange tickets. We have a bit of a wild SBL team composition wise, so let's get this video going. The songs for this SBL are all from Aqua, as this was announced on the We Are Challengers livestream on June 30th. The songs are Mirai no Bokura wa Shiteru yo, Happy Party Train, and Mirai Ticket. Next, the MVP categories, which for this SBL went back to the default of voltage, SP gauges, and skill activations. The SBL stat buff, unsurprisingly, went to all Aqua cards, which did make for some interesting team compositions, which I will talk about coming up. First, we have Mirai no Bokura wa Shiteru yo, or Mirai Boku for short. A smile attribute song, this live has a cleansable 15% appeal debuff to off attribute cards. There are two note gimmicks. The first gives a 50% SP gauge fill, which comes at note 7, and then a 20% skill activation rate up for the next 10 notes for all smile cards, which happens a total of 3 times. All of the appeal chances are straightforward, with all of them being voltage based and providing a 25% SP voltage gain. Okay, so remember how I said a little bit ago the team compositions were going to be a little interesting? Well, due to the low 156 note total, don't be shocked if you actually happen to see a lot of Second Fest Maru, First Fest Kanan, and Second Fest Rico in front lines. Even though this scoring strategy is completely off attribute, running the 2 strongest base appeal cards in the game with just 1 SP gauge filler seemed to score consistently better than a triple smile SP gauge filler strategy of Miracle Voyageo, Christmas Setsuna, and Neuro Kotori. Now, unfortunately, you will have to run some type of cleanser with the Maru Kanan Rico composition, and most players opted for an SP gauge cleanser like Fruits Nico or Flower Symphony Kasumi because you can pretty consistently pop your first SP gauge by note 10. Lastly, if it wasn't as obvious, the reason why I seem not to see a lot of the gauge filler strat was twofold. A low note total, which makes gauge cycling heavily susceptible to RNG, and only one card, Miracle Voyageo, who benefits from the Aqua stat boost. Players searching for the SP gauge MVP are probably going to use that Smile Second Year's gauge filler strat if they can, supplementing it with a second strategy of their best SP gauge fillers and skill activation rate up upon strategy switch backliners. Players wanting to go for the skill activation title are best served using their best skill activation rate up tap active cards, as there is only one card in the UR slot from the Smile attribute that has that tap active, which is Initial Nozomi. Since no one is going to be able to maximize the note gimmick anyway, just make your best skill activation team and go for the MVP. The second song for this SBL is Happy Party Train. To refresh everyone's memory, this is a pure attribute song with a pretty sizable 20% off attribute appeal debuff, so bring your cleansers if you need to. There are 2 note gimmicks. The first, which gives pure cards an additional 20% SP gauge gain for the next 10 notes, which happens 3 times, and the second, which gives pure attribute cards a 10% skill activation rate up for the next 10 notes, which happens twice. All of the 5 ACs revolve around the pure attribute as well, with ACs 1 and 3 giving off attribute cards a 10% SP gauge gain rate decrease, ACs 2 and 4 giving off attribute cards a 10% base appeal debuff, and AC number 5 giving off attribute cards a 15% skill activation rate decrease. Voltage rankings were pretty straightforward, with the newly minted composition of Second Fest Rina, First Fest Kasumi, and Detective Pana being a very strong composition that I saw a lot in my JP lobbies. I surprisingly didn't see many teams try to run First Fest Yo and Fest Chica, most likely due to their inability to get over the voltage tap cap. So this duel will probably be one I do some test runs with before SBL starts. Remember also that because the song is cleansable, you may still be able to get away with running very strong off-attribute cards like First Fest Kanan and Second Fest Rico, though you are going to miss out on the buffs from the gimmick notes and get hit by the intra-AC gimmicks. SP Gauge Cyclers shouldn't have too much trouble with this song, and if you scout it on the Fest Kotori and Rina banner, there's a possibility of you running 2 full strategies of pure attribute SP type gauge fillers, if you include event cards like Flurry of Pana, Steam Maiden Nico, and Night Parade Maki. Realistically though, a lot of times this MVP title will most likely be nabbed by Voltage competitors running the meta gauge cycling composition we outlined earlier. The skill activation MVP is going to be a little harder to optimize, as there are only 2 URs in the pure attribute that have that tap active, Huntress Rin and Illumination Knight Maru. So if you're chasing that MVP, just add in both of these cards if you can, and fill out the rest of your team with the best cards to help support them. The last song for this SBL is Mirai Ticket. This natural attribute song has a non-cleansable 20% off attribute appeal debuff, so take out those cleansers so you don't waste a formation spot. There are 2 note gimmicks. The first, giving voltage types a 10% appeal increase for the next 20 notes, which happens 3 times, and the second, which gives guard types a 20% skill activation rate up for the next 20 notes, which happens twice. The first 5 ACs of the song all require varying amounts of voltage and give your next SP gauge a 20% voltage boost, with the last AC requiring a very hefty 160k voltage gauge pop to clear. The damage per note in the song also caused a lot of formational changes, as there were many players opting to backline Fest Nico since the note damage is on the upper average at 729, which becomes a big problem when you factor in that there are only 80 of the 189 notes in the song that fall within ACs. Now, building for this song was pretty interesting. I saw a few different strategies which, when reviewing after I completed my run, made me stop and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. The first team stayed on attribute and opted for a main scoring strategy of Second Fest Maru, First Fest Emma, and First Fest Yohane. The second strategy I saw swapped out Fest Yohane and Emma for Second Fest Rin and Valentine's Day Honoka. The third strategy I saw being used comprised of Second Fest Maru again, but this time paired her with First Fest Kanan and Second Fest Rico. The last strategy went for frontline healing, going with Kanan, Rico, and Fest Mari. The common denominator between all 4 of these lineups, they all have 18 million voltage upside, and from what I could tell, was scoring consistently better than a lineup with First Fest Emma, First Fest Nozo, and Valentine's Day Honoka, the quote default meta composition for the natural attribute. This is mainly due to the song not having any gimmicks to directly buff either gauge gain or skill activation for on-attribute cards. Ultimately, you'll need to do some testing in regular lives to see which approach you want to take for this song, and don't forget to factor in the Aqua stat buff as you do so. SP cyclers don't get any extra assistance for this song via no gimmicks or intra-AC gimmicks, so just run your best teams, backline Noble Princess Rico and Fest Nico if you can to mitigate the note damage, and try to go to town. The same goes for skill activation peeps, though realistically you'll probably want to sneak in some SK type stamina healers just to keep you alive, as even for most of my runs on JP, I was ending up in the red stamina, even with 3 UR max limit break, max skill level necklaces. That wraps up this 14th official SBL guide. As always, a big thank you to Xifrid for help with the visual assets for this video. Also, as is our norm when we close out SBL guides, shoutouts going to my Twitch subs: Shut It, 86 Romy, Skeleton Clicker, Anime Holic, AJ Bailey, Spicy Quiche, Captain Cupcake, Halcyon, Sinring, Niji Teddy, Snorksoul, and Xifrid, most of whom have gifted subs or given bits in the channel as well. I've been I Am the Shaz, take it easy, be nice to each other, and I will see you all next time.